Hey, Maria, are you ready?
I am always ready, Renzo.
Ready to talk about a Spanish phrase?
Love it.
But don't worry, it's just one Spanish phrase.
And we are the companion podcast to News in Slow Spanish.
That's a great place where you can learn Spanish by listening to current events and so much more. And from time to time, you're going to hear expressions in News in Slow Spanish. And so that's why we created this podcast to dive into those expressions and tell you a little bit about where they come from and how to use them. And so,
But wait, not only from time to time, we have an entire catalog of idiomatic expressions that makes you look around your friends that you already know the language because you know the expressions.
You're right. I was being too modest. It's amazing. I love the catalog. And every week we do feature a new phrase. And so this phrase you can find in our catalog. And it's the one that we're going to spend some time here today talking about. I'll tell you later. It actually came to me. The inspiration for this episode came to me from a personal story, something that really happened to me this weekend. But more on that later. The phrase itself is colgar de un hilo.
Hanging by a thread.
Exactly. We use it in English too, right? Hanging by a thread. What does that mean to you?
To me, is when something is about to collapse.
Exactly. Precarious, on the verge of falling apart, of disaster.
Yeah, like...
Like what? Like so many things right now?
Like absolutely everything nowadays,
okay.
It seems.
Hold that thought. We'll come back to talk about the precarious nature of our world today and any other examples we can think of. But first of all, why do we say that things hang by a thread when they're on the verge of collapse? I mean, just the words, it makes sense. Hanging by a thread, it looks dangerous. It feels dangerous, like it can break at any second, right?
Yes, that makes sense.
So this idea, when things make so much sense, just at face value like that, their origins are very ancient. And that's the case this time. Trace it back to the legend of the Fates in ancient Greece. These some people refer to them as witches, others as like demigods, or actually they predate the gods. But these three women who hold and cut the thread of life. So each thread represents the trajectory of a human life, and they hold it in their hands and decide when it's time to cut it.
That is fascinating. So, well, pretty much every single life is hanging by a thread.
Yes.
Longer thread, shorter thread, but every life can be cut at any time.
And it's fragile, right?
Yes.
Precarious. But there's another legend, which I find really interesting because it illustrates more of the way that we use this expression today. So yes, the thread and the fates, it illustrates the delicate nature, the fragility of life. But have you heard of the sword of Damocles?
La espada de Damocles. Yes, of course. It was hanging above his head and it could fall at any moment.
You got it. And that's it. It was King Dionysius teaching a lesson to one of his subjects, a courtier called Damocles, who was always praising the king and talking about his riches and his lavish lifestyle. He was jealous of the king. And so one day the king decides, Dionysius, to invite Damocles to switch places with him. And so he sits Damocles on the king's throne and throws a big party, a banquet. And then at the end of the party, Damocles finds out that this whole time while he was sitting in the throne, there was a sword hanging above his head, hanging by one, I think the legend says the hair of a horse hair.
So at any moment, he could have died.
Exactly.
But he didn't.
Yeah. So this expression we use to talk about close calls, right? When we get away with like a traffic accident that almost happened, but didn't happen.
Like the other day in China, there was a truck driver that he was driving his truck and then the bridge where he was driving collapsed and his truck ended up hanging by a thread. Almost literally, he was rescued. Everything was okay.
Exactly.
But that is a real example.
Much smaller, but this is the thing that inspired me to choose this phrase for today. This weekend, I was leaving a business downtown where I live, and I looked up, and above the exit to the business in a little awning, some rafters, a little baby bird had just fallen out of its nest. But it didn't hit the ground. It was suspended in midair, literally hanging by a thread, a piece of hair or straw, part of the nest, it was stuck to that and hanging by a thread. So I asked for a stool, I asked for a cup, and I asked for a pair of scissors, and I gently cut it loose, and then I had a baby bird in a cup.
And did you put it back in the nest? What did you do?
That's what you're supposed to do, but this nest was so hidden in a hole, like the hole was smaller than my hand. It's a very small bird. Luckily, I live close to a wildlife clinic, so I took it over there, and they're rehabilitating it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
adorable.
But until, I was the hero of the hour, until I came by, and I was luckily very happy that I was able to save the bird. Its life was hanging.
By a thread.
Colgaba de un hilo.
Mm-hmm. Talking about examples in the real world, I was reading yesterday about the fact that Trump is thinking of the denaturalization of American citizens that commit a civil crime or whose naturalization process could be deemed as suspicious.
Ugh.
So that is a very wide net of, hey, I don't know, you got your passport because you were married to an American citizen, but your marriage lasted only 5 years. That's not real love. That's suspicious. We're going to remove your citizenship.
Yeah.
I know other presidents have removed citizenship, but I don't sure. I feel like all the passports are now hanging by a thread.
Sí, cuelgan de un hilo. Our citizenship, our rule of law, cuelga de un hilo. Honestly, I think this sets up a way to weaponize this to get rid of political dissidents and opposition.
Which is what has been happening in colleges, in educations. Like,
Yeah.
definitely free speech is hanging by a thread because
Exacto. Cuelga de un hilo.
cuelga de un hilo la libertad de expresión. Even us, we talk about politics, we talk about the things we disagree. We are not doing anything criminal, but still, if somebody doesn't like it, they can say, let me look into their passport. Let me look into how they got the citizenship.
Yeah.
So that I cannot help but feel threatened, feel unease,
Absolutely.
feel that everything I've built is hanging by a thread, colgando de un hilo.
And I'm sorry you feel that way, but I relate, and I think it's a time for all of us to be careful, but also to keep speaking our minds. Even when things are hanging by a thread, cuando cuelgan de un hilo, we can't just be quiet, can we?
We shouldn't, and we're lucky enough that I think we believe so strongly in the freedom of speech that we continue to do it and will continue to do so. But I'm not sure if somebody, for example, spent 4 years in college and his diploma is hanging by a thread because they went to a certain, they wrote an article and that people might not like. Maybe the first instinct is to, okay, let me first get my diploma and then I will start publishing all the articles I want.
That's a very good point. So I think it reminds us what this phrase teaches, that cuando las cosas cuelgan de un hilo, when things are hanging by a thread, we should be careful.
We should. And this was
just a Spanish phrase.
Thank you so much, and we'll hope to see you next week.
Bye.